Hi everyone, it's Sandy Kinnett in the Owen Career Management Center. Thank you so much for joining us for our third and final Facebook Live event. Today we wanted to spend some time talking to you about recruiting and the timelines associated with the different recruiting paths. So we are going to let Brooke Meissner talk a little bit about the earlier boot camps. So as you are aware, there are some pre-MBA boot camps that you can research and apply for and attend. And so he's going to go over some of the information associated with that. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the national career fairs. So this is something that you'll want to have on your radar as school approaches and start to think about whether or not some of those events may make sense for you given your recruiting path and what you're thinking about in terms of your internship. The last part of the session today will be Emily Anderson, and she's going to talk just in general about the overall recruiting timeline. So you've got the really early stuff that you want to think about now. You've got some stuff, the national career fairs that are going to happen right when school starts, and then the recruiting timeline really for the whole academic year. And so this is really to help you start thinking about your recruiting strategy and how you're going to approach things once school starts. So with that, I will pass it on to Brooke, and thanks again for joining us today.
All right, greetings everyone. I hope that you're doing well. So in our first webinar, we talked a little bit about the pre-MBA programs that are happening. I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about that just in case you hadn't had a chance to really think much about that. Sorry, getting centered here. Okay. So a couple things to keep in mind with that. First off, check the Welcome to Owen page. There's a whole section on pre-MBA programs. Find that, take a look. There are about a dozen programs that are posted. You'll notice that some of the deadlines are already passing. Some are still open, though. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But in general, what you'll find is the pre-MBA programs tend to focus around a couple of industries that have had them over time. So one big industry is investment banking, financial services. A second one you'll see a lot of is consulting. And a third one is in the consumer packaged goods industry, a lot of brand management marketing positions. They'll have their own camps as well. So be thinking about those. On the Welcome to Owen page, we've listed the programs that we're aware of that are open this year. I'm sure there are others. I'm checking every once in a while to see which other ones are added. But I'm going to mention a couple of others companies that have had programs in the past that, as far as we know, they aren't holding one this year. But if I were you, I would be checking these companies, both their job posting sites. I'd also follow them on LinkedIn. It's a good time to start following companies you're interested in LinkedIn. So some of the companies that don't have anything listed at present, as far as we know, but have in the past are Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Nestle, PwC, R.W. Baird, and SC Johnson. So just another reason to be keeping an eye out and be looking for those. Now, in thinking about these different events, it's probably helpful to think, why are these companies holding, these events? They haven't even really formally started recruiting yet. Classes haven't even started yet. I think it's primarily for two main reasons. One is the companies want to educate candidates. They want students to start thinking about what is it like to work at their company in a certain industry. But also it's about recruiting. I know it's early for that, but they want to start identifying top talent, and it's for some of both. So for example, I can think of a couple years ago, we had a student who attended the JP Morgan, I think it's called Early Advantage pre-MBA program, and he attended that event. It was a good experience for him, but in that he ended up learning that he didn't want to pursue private wealth management, and that's okay. That's better to learn it then than from an internship. So sometimes it's more educational, but sometimes it's for recruiting because some companies truly do extend internships at the end of their pre-MBA programs. SC Johnson is an example. We've had students who received internship offers just from that program that they hold over the summer before classes even start. So the length and structure of these programs can really vary. I mentioned the SC Johnson program. It's, as far as we know, one of the longest. It's typically been about 2 weeks. Whereas on the other end, there are things like the Connect to Bain programs. This year it's got a new name. I think it's called Experience Bain. And sometimes that's just been an afternoon. You'll go to a local Bain office, spend an afternoon there, hear from a couple of the consultants, hear for a little bit from the recruiters, talk a little about timelines, and then you're done. So we've had students who've done that in just a couple of hours. Some companies use these events for diversity recruiting to focus on certain types of candidates that they don't see a lot of. So Google, for example, they have something that's focused just on veterans. Reaching out, LGBT, they focus on those candidates, trying to connect them with employers in a range of industries. So sometimes they're more targeted towards that, and sometimes it's just open. It's just, hey, anybody who is interested in working at R.W. Baird in investment banking, they can come to this event, for example. So another thing I'll mention is that some of the events are employer-specific, some of them are organization-specific. I mentioned Reaching Out. Jumpstart Advisory also does several events. Forte Foundation does some as well. So just kind of be aware of how some of those programs you're just going to meet with one company, and some you'll have exposure to several. Finally, just kind of thinking about deadlines for this. As you can see on the Welcome to ON page, some of the deadlines have already passed. There are some deadlines that are still open. I believe the William Blair Lift program, for example, their deadline is today. If you're thinking about that one, you may want to act quickly. And to think about outcomes, usually I would say, we're just talking a little bit about this, say that usually we have somewhere in the ballpark of 30 to 40 students who are attending these types of events. Certainly the single largest is the Forte conference for incoming female candidates. So some of you may be attending that. It's a great event. And every year we'll have usually a couple of students who will receive internship offers from these events. Some years there's not a lot, but a couple of years we've had several candidates from the Forte conference alone who've received those full-time offers. So yeah, so that's a quick overview of the pre-MBA programs, and hope that can help. If you're planning on pursuing those, make sure that you're getting your resume in line now so that you can have that set when you're applying. And I will go ahead and move along. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Brooke. So now that we have covered some of the details that go into the early MBA camps, I'll talk to you a little bit about the national career fairs and whether or not you think that those may be events that are of interest to you. So thought that we could just briefly talk through 3 questions. What are the national career fairs? Should I go? And how will I prepare if I decide to go? So the national career fairs are huge events for employers that are recruiting MBAs into their organization. And they take place over the course of the first several months of school. And we have students that go to multiple events. So the main ones that we have students attend are National Black and Prispanica, which is now combined this year to be a very large career fair. MBA Veterans, we have the Reaching Out MBA Conference, and there's a National Women's MBA Conference. So in addition to the career fair component of these conferences, there's also a lot of programming that takes place as well, and some career development opportunities to take advantage of through these events. And the main thing that our students attend, of course, is the career fair portion of the events. And sometimes there are up to 300 some odd companies that have multiple openings within their organizations across functions. So it's really, it can be a really overwhelming scenario. And so we do a lot to help our students get ready for those events and talk to them about what they can do to prepare and set themselves up for success so that they can really take advantage of some of those interactions with MBA employers. So should you go, I would recommend that for particular functions and industries, it can be really beneficial. So it's an individual choice, and these are certainly not school-sponsored events. So these are events that are put on by organizations outside of the school. And so you want to take a look at what your particular career path you think you're going to want to do and what companies you're interested in talking to, and kind of make decisions after doing some research. So all of these conferences and career fairs will have awesome websites and great resources that you can look through and kind of see what companies are going to be there, what programming's available. A lot of them have case competitions, so that may be something that you're interested in exploring. And so whether or not you should go is going to ultimately be an individual decision. However, for marketing students, for corporate finance, for some of the very traditional MBA career paths, you're going to get a lot of exposure to companies that recruit for those types of positions. So it's an awesome chance to go and attend and really put yourself out there and talk through your story and your value add to an MBA employer. For National Black and Prispanica, we usually have around 50 to 60 Owen students attend, so it's probably the largest representation of Owen students, and we will also have a booth at that event. The Career Management Center will. So we try and put a lot of support around that event because that's where we see a lot of our students go to get early access to employers, get face-to-face interaction with companies that may not come to campus. So that's another consideration too when you're thinking about whether or not you should go is this one of my top companies and they may not come to campus to recruit. This may be my way to get into their pipeline. So that would be kind of a recommendation and something to think about as well. So how would you prepare? There are a lot of workshops we will do. We are finalizing the dates for that programming and preparation, and we will definitely get you ready. So some of that will be through helping you with your resume and getting your resume ready. Some of it will be helping you draft your cover letter and getting that ready so that you can apply to positions at the career fair leading up to it, because some companies will have formal applications prior to the event. A lot of it will be around telling your story. So how do you walk up to an employer and introduce yourself now that you are branding yourself as a graduate business school student? And so we'll do a lot of work with you on those types of things just to really help you feel more comfortable when you are in front of potential employers and just networking overall at bigger scale events like this. So just to kind of summarize before handing it over to Emily, national career fairs can be a great way to talk to employers early. So they're going to be, in those first few months of school, September and October, talk to companies early, start to kind of feel out what types of positions are available within those organizations. Also maximizing the resources on those websites, on those career fair websites, and being ready to work with us and help you get ready. So with that, I will hand it over to Emily. She's going to talk to you about just the general recruiting timeline in addition to some of this early stuff we've talked about.
Thanks, Sandy. I hope everyone's having a good afternoon. So I wanted to talk a little more about what to expect overall, so the whole year long in your first year at Owen. So we're going to be posting a general timeline on the Welcome to Owen website. And so you'll get just the broad basics of what to expect as the year goes along. So I'll walk through that generally right now. So When you get to campus in August, we will be really working a lot on your resume. A resume is a transformation document for you. So it's a way for us to get to know you. It's also a way for you to understand the things that a recruiter needs to know about your experience, your skills, your background. And so we are working a lot on that within the first few weeks when you're on campus. Also, while you're here, you may already be doing some amount of career exploration. You may know now what you want to do, or you may still be trying to figure that out. So we will have various events really around the whole idea of exploring MBA career paths. So the MBA is a great degree. It's very broad. People go into consulting, they go into banking, they go into marketing, operations. So it's really across the spectrum. So that whole exploration process can take some time, can be nerve-wracking at times as well, but we want you to make the time to really think this through, because this is a great period in your life where you can make some significant career moves, and so thinking it through is a great thing. As Sandy just talked about, the National Career Fairs happen usually in the end of September through mid-October. They are large, and they are really centered around companies that have the ability and the desire to hire an MBA, but they have the ability to forecast. So while there's thousands of companies that hire MBA, there are certain large companies that really do put a lot of effort into hiring at this degree level, and they are able to do some workforce planning, so they know across the spectrum generally how many people they want to bring in for a summer internship class. And then how many they need for their full time. So this is where large companies can really get out in front of the general market, because they have that ability to forecast. And as you'll see as you go through the year, smaller companies often don't have that level of visibility into what their needs will be this early in the recruiting time frame. So those things happen early. Interns or first-year students go, second-year students go. They are talking to large companies, and as we talked about metaphors about these career fairs, and what you get as an intern in those career fairs is often like, think of it as a baseball game. If you hit a home run, meaning you get an internship offer out of it, it's usually about 10% of the population, but well over half get on base. So you make a contact, you get some information, you learn how to present yourself better, you also learn the market better. So it's valuable for those that are interested in these really large programs to get exposure to it that early in the cycle. So moving on into October, what we really start focusing on is getting you ready for your interviews. So while if you're going to an intern or a national career fair, we work on internship or interviewing prep before that. But for those that are going through the normal cycle, and really for everybody else, we really start working pretty, concentrating a lot on getting you ready to interview. If you're going into consulting, you really start learning to do interviewing in the case format. But for almost everyone that's going to interview for an MBA position, you may have to answer some hypothetical business question or a technical question. So learning how to answer those types of questions in an interview is really important, and we're working a lot on that during that time frame. There's also a group of students that will actually interview in the fall, and those are students that are interested in human and organizational performance. So companies that hire in HR leadership development programs and in HR consulting will actually be on campus late in October and into November and do on-campus interviewing. So that will happen. Those folks that are interested in that type of career path, you'll start working at the very beginning. Sandy really runs a great program, and everyone works together to get ready for that time frame, which would be late October, early November. there is also a possibility that you might start interviewing in financial services and private wealth and in investment banking at that time. That's an aggressive recruiting cycle, and the financial services firms may be on campus later in the fall to do interviewing at that point as well. Also, in November, you're going to start seeing general internship applications go out on our website and on company websites. So again, these are largely companies that have the visibility for their hiring needs to know how many they're going to need for the next summer. They'll start getting those out in the late fall. You'll start applying. So that's when you definitely need your resume ready, and you'll be writing a lot of cover letters to get ready for interviews that will likely start beginning to take place in January. So we're working through that process and want to make sure that you are putting in enough applications and are really at that point being able to target your companies so you can get your applications in. And then January through the rest of the year is really around internship interviewing. Our heavy period for on-campus interviews is January and February. So 90% of our on-campus interviews for internships are going to take place before spring break. So you'll have put your applications in. You should hear from the company sometime in December about the interview schedule, and then the actual interviews will be January through March for through February for on campus. Most of them will actually physically be on campus, but there are companies that do first round interviews virtually. So it's either on the phone or a Skype or some type of video conference interview. So that's the time frame for that. For companies that are smaller, or for certain industries like, say, real estate, they may not have a really good idea of what their needs are until later in the spring. So the entire cycle for internship interviewing will last all the way through from January through into the school year. So to give you an idea, usually 20% of folks have an offer before January, so that's the early cycle folks. January through March. At that point in March, about mid-March, 75% of the folks will have an internship offer. So then you've got the remaining 25% of the class. It's usually solidifying their internship later in the season. So by this time in the year, I think we're at like 97% with an internship right now. So that's the general timeline. So I hope that helps some. And again, we'll be posting that diagram on the Welcome to Hohen site so you can get a visual on how the year progresses. So at this point, if there's any questions that are out there, I'd be happy to answer, or Brooke or Sandy as well. Do we have questions?
We had one, and I replied on one.
Okay, so that's already been answered.
And this will stay on the site, so people have questions later.
Great. So if you have questions, go on and post it on the Facebook site, and we'll answer them as best as we can. And thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.